Welcome into another episode of In the Bonus. My name is Jorie Mickens, and this evening, I watched the game between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat, a nationally televised game, a game in which the Miami Heat won 106-94, and I don't think the final score is really indicative of what happened during this game, but I'll get into that. In this game, it was really a balanced effort from everyone on the Miami Heat. And just looking at the box scores, even you can say that Jimmy Butler led the team with 21 points, but they had 6 players scoring double figures. Bam had 18, Trevor Ariza had 10, Kendrick Nunn had 13 points in just 22 minutes as a starter, but I believe he left the game early. Tyler Hero had 18 points off the bench for Miami, and Goran Dragic had 15 points off the bench for Miami. And off the bench as well for the Heat, a very surprising appearance from Udonis Haslem, who played 3 minutes in this game. His first appearance of the season, the first time he's checked in for the Heat this season. His first game, I looked it up, since August 14th, back when Miami was in the bubble, of course, against the Pacers. So it's been quite some time since Udonis Haslem has seen some NBA action, but it was fun to see him back on the court. He had 4 points in that limited amount of time, and he probably would have played a little bit more had he not gotten ejected in his first game back. He got ejected because he had some words to say with Dwight Howard, I believe it was. Those two kind of got into a scuffle. And, yeah, just like that, 2 technicals for Udonis Haslem, and he was thrown out of the game in 3 minutes. But, hey, maybe that's what they wanted to. That's exactly what Miami was planning. Who knows? They just get under the skin of some of Philly's players, irritate them, and that's exactly what Miami did all game long. They were just irritants, especially on the defensive side of the floor. I mean, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid combined for 14 points in this game. And Embiid, this was actually he only missed a game, but he missed last game against the Indiana Pacers for the Sixers, a game in which they lost and a game in which snapped their 8-game winning streak with an illness. So Joel Embiid came back for this game, and who knows, maybe he was still feeling the effects of that illness during this game. That's why he had an off night. Again, just 6 points for Embiid, shot 3 of 9 from the field. So not a very good showing from him. Not a really good showing from anyone on the Sixers for that matter. Outside of Tobias Harris, I mean, the Philly got 0 production from basically everyone on their team. So, again, I mean, I don't really have that many notes necessarily from this game because I've done a few of these episodes, especially on the Sixers, and I've talked extensively about this team. I think I know what this team is at this point. I feel like I have a good grasp of what the Sixers can do and what they can't do. But I think the biggest takeaway, and this is interesting, this was in a very important game. You know, I think this is what makes the play-in tournament so interesting because every game now really, really matters for every single team, basically. Even if you've already clinched the playoffs, like, this was a really important game for both teams. And right now, actually, the Portland Trailblazers are playing the Phoenix Suns. That's also an important game but I mean, again, this is a Philadelphia versus Miami matchup, so I'll focus on that. If the Sixers had won this game, they would have clinched the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and would have secured home court advantage throughout the entire playoffs. And for Miami, who is currently tied with the the Atlanta Hawks, and I believe the New York Knicks are half a game back. of both the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. Miami is now 39-31. So again, at the moment, the Hawks are currently in the 4 seed, and Miami is currently in the 5 seed, but they have the identical records. And then the Knicks are just half a game back of both of those teams. So this was a very important game for Miami, especially because if they fall out of that 4-5 matchup, which again could potentially be the Knicks, be the Hawks, or be Miami, they would have to play Milwaukee in the first round. And yes, they did beat them last year, but I'm sure Miami would much rather play either New York or Atlanta in the first round than Giannis and the much improved Milwaukee Bucks, I would imagine. But who knows? So this was a really important game for both teams, and it was surprising that it was so one-sided the entire time. I mean, just to start the game, I guess I took a few notes from the game itself. Some things right off the bat, one thing that surprised me was Duncan Robinson defending Ben Simmons to start the game. That was a little surprising just because, you have Jimmy Butler on this team. Trevor Ariza is another person or another player that possibly could have been defending Ben Simmons at the beginning, but they put Duncan Robinson on Ben Simmons, and I think that was really when he got the bulk of his points, even though he only had 8 points. I think that was really when he got the bulk of his offensive production, really like to start the first quarter, and they quickly switched Duncan Robinson off Ben Simmons and put Trevor Ariza on him, who Trevor Ariza was signed in March, I believe, and is already become a starter for this team. And, I'm going to talk about Miami a little bit later, but he made a pretty, noticeable impact in this game, both on the offensive end and the defensive end. Again, he only had 10 points, but his ability to stretch the floor, knock down threes, he plays a little bit bigger. Like he's essentially their power forward in this lineup with Butler, with Kendrick Nunn, with Duncan Robinson, and with Bam. He's essentially the power forward. So he plays a lot bigger, I think, than what he might be accustomed to. But he can also stick with players like Ben Simmons or like a Tobias Harris. He can defend wings like that are quick. And at the same time, he can hold his own against maybe some of the more powerful players in the NBA. So he was a really good addition for Miami. Just another piece to, add on to that crazy defensive rotation that they have in Miami. It was definitely on display tonight. But there was an incident actually with Trevor Ariza where I believe it was late in the first quarter. Embiid was driving to the rim kind of on the left side of the floor and kind of threw up a floater and landed kind of awkwardly. And he landed in the vicinity of Trevor Ariza's foot/ankle. I couldn't necessarily see exactly what happened, but Embiid just fell to the floor and fell right on Ariza's lower leg area, I'll say. And Ariza just fell to the floor. Like it did not look good at all. It looked really bad, actually. And he was grabbing at his ankle area. And, they showed a replay. And then kind of out of that replay, you could see down the floor, Ariza had eventually kind of walked off on his own power. And, well, actually, he was taken out of the game. So Ariza got checked out of the game because, obviously he was hobbled. But kind of on the next possession, you could see Ariza standing on the sideline, standing on the bench, yelling at Embiid, asking, it looked like it didn't look friendly. I'll say that. It definitely didn't look friendly. And then during the next timeout, the TV break, they actually got double technicals, Trevor Ariza and Joel Embiid, because they just kept arguing. So just to start off the bat, this game was just, and that's exactly what the broadcasters were saying. This is going to be playoff intensity. This is definitely going to have the makings of a playoff game because, again, if the standings stay the same, if Philly is the number 1 seed and Miami stays in that 4-5 matchup, this could be a potential second-round series. Definitely has the potential of being a second-round series if both teams can take care of business in the first round. So, again, I think this game was really Miami sending a message to the Sixers because they did everything right, honestly, on especially on the defensive end. Um, I already mentioned the Udonis Haslam thing, but like I said, on defense, Miami switched to a 2-3 zone pretty early on in the second quarter, and I think that the announcers or the broadcasters were mentioning, yeah, it's a 2-3 zone, but it looked a lot. I don't really know how to explain what it was. Like, I think at one point it was a 2-3 zone, and then kind of later in the game it looked like a 1-2-2 maybe. It was interesting, and it was just a variation of many zones from Eric Spoelstra, and it certainly gave the Sixers a lot of problem because the Sixers are not a very good 3-point shooting team. That's their one kind of issue. As you know, despite being one of the best teams in the league, they're not like, say like the Utah Jazz, who can kill you with threes if you're not careful. But Philly, despite having players like Seth Curry and Danny Green and even Tobias Harris sometimes, they don't necessarily shoot the three ball very well. So that zone against the Sixers worked very well, and they just completely struggled because they couldn't get to the rim. It was that simple. They just really, really struggled getting and attacking to the rim. And that was evident by the fact that their two star players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, who are, at times could be some of the most unstoppable forces at the rim or attacking the rim, just to 14 points combined. I mean, that's just crazy. That's a really, really good defensive effort from Miami. But, I mean, there's really not much to say else about this game other than this was certainly Miami sending a message. And I feel like me personally, I would say Miami, I don't know. I'm kind of doubting Miami to have that Cinderella run again. Like, they had a pretty slow start to the season, and you can chalk it up to definitely injuries, and they had some COVID absences at the beginning of the season. And as of late, I think they showed a graphic in April and May. They're 14-7, and I guess now 15-7 after their win tonight. So they've certainly turned their season around after having a really slow start. But I don't know. I just don't necessarily see this team going very far in the playoffs again. Like, I love this team. Don't get me wrong. I love this team. I love Jimmy Butler. I love Bam. Bam was really good tonight. He showcased again why he is one of the best two-way centers in the NBA and a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I love the depth. I love the veterans all throughout this roster. But I feel like in a 7-game playoff series against the Sixers, like, I would imagine this team would be able to figure out how to beat that 2-3 zone or whatever zone they were running. I would imagine Philadelphia would be able to devise a plan to defeat this team in a 7-game series. I just think that Philly has been so good all season. It's so difficult for me to say or pick Miami over Philly in a 7-game series. It's just tough for me. But I think, if anything, this game made me realize that a second round matchup between these two teams would probably go 7 games. It would probably go at least 6, possibly 7. Because, and I probably should have thought of that, before heading in this game. But I think Philly did a pretty good job. I do think they got a free win earlier on in the season because I think, if I remember correctly, there was a game where Miami – actually, no, I think it was the other way around. I think Philly was the one team that had a lot of absences due to COVID and injuries, and they played Miami. I could be wrong. I would have to fact check that. I think one of their games during the season series was impacted a lot by COVID to start the season, but I just feel like Philly would be able to figure out how to win against this team. I just have that feeling. I love Miami, and again, if they were to go to the conference finals again, that being Miami, I wouldn't be shocked. I certainly would not be shocked. I mean, they're I guess I should mention this though. Victor Oladipo a few days ago Miami announced that he was going to be having season-ending quad surgery. So that certainly puts a damper on that kind of acquisition that they made not too long ago. But at the same time, I think this team still has what it takes to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't know if they would necessarily get to the finals again. I It's just so hard for me to say. And maybe I'm just being stupid because they've proven themselves that they can do it. And, they might be even better than what they were last year. Who knows? Like with Trevor Ariza, the acquisitions of Trevor Ariza, with Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero now kind of playing even better. I don't know, maybe not even better, but they have more experience. They have that playoff experience. They know what it takes. Goran Dragic, you're not asking too much of Goran Dragic anymore. Jimmy Butler is really their like de facto point guard almost at times. Like Kendrick Nunn is probably like who they list at point guard, but I feel like Jimmy Butler is really running the offense a lot in their starting lineup. And then, you have Andre Iguodala, who has plenty of playoff experience. Dwayne Dedmon, who gave them pretty good minutes in this game. Like, they have so many pieces on this team, veteran pieces on this team that know what it takes to win the playoffs. And again, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. So it's going to be so fun. I'll say that's all I can really say is the playoffs are going to be so much fun. And yeah, I mean, Miami, kudos to you for taking down the top seed in the Eastern Conference on a night where they really wanted to win. But we'll see what happens moving forward. Yeah, but that's really all I have to say for this game. It was a fun watch, even though it was a blowout. It was good to see. It was a defensive stalwart, really, for Miami. They just did so well on that end of the floor, and it just makes for, I guess, a lot of storylines heading into that potential second round series between these two teams. But that's gonna do it for me. Shorter episode, I would say. For this one, but until next time, this has been another edition of In the Bonus.